You can't be serious, man. You cannot be serious!
Okay, we are live. It is Sirius Sports. It is Monday night, and we are going to get serious because we have a budding astrological media star with us tonight. It's Gracey from North Astrology. Hi, Gracey.
Hi, thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, you're welcome. And of course, my maid man, Mr. Al D, Al Dog, the dog father. What's going on, Al?
Hey, how are you guys doing tonight? I think this is going to be a great show. I'm looking forward to having the ESPN superstar herself with us today to break down the serendipitous occurrence that occurred where, Rob and I covered something, Taylor Swift and Mr. Travis Kelce. And then later, ESPN just happened to do the same thing with our friend Gracey here. So that's what brought us all together.
What a time.
So we're gonna explore the synchronistic serendipity, and we're gonna find out a lot more about Gracey, and just happened in the aftermath and what led her to astrology. But before I do, I just want to say a big shout out to everybody in chat tonight, all 13 of you. We all love you dearly. I mean, so Gracey, we've been doing this now, I think, for about 5 or 6 weeks out. Is that it?
Something like that, yeah.
Right. So what we're trying to do is we're trying to find intersection between sports, astrology, high strange, synchromysticism, anything that's going to expand the view of our pastimes. And I thought with the true note in Aries going through my 5th house, it might be a good time to jump in on this. And because I've always been a huge fan of sports, and as an astrologer, I've been able to see how these things really correlate. Like for instance, when Steve Young and Jerry Rice are 1 degree apart with their birth date, right? What's that going to show you? It's going to show you that they're really compatible. And Jerry Rice was an absolute. He was good with Joe Montana. He might have been better with Steve Young. I mean, let's call it for what it is. And then you have somebody like Al Davis, who's the owner of the Raiders, very passionate, very tempestuous, very loyal owner, shares the same birth date with George Steinbrenner, who is kind of the baseball version of Al Davis, right? So we see all these correlations that can happen in sports. And the other cool thing about sports is the real-time nature of it, right? We don't have to wait around. We can talk about players and games. And we had Mark Matheny on, I think it was our 2nd show, Al. And Mark is, the master of loading up, 3 charts all in a row. And one of the things we talked about was Brock Purdy and Kyle Shanahan and Mike McDaniel and Tua Tagovailoa, and they're all just completely lined up, right? Just notch and groove stuff. And then what's happening, with the exception of the bump in the road yesterday with the Bills, both those guys are just absolutely killing it, right? So you can see all these correspondences in sports, and you don't have to wait forever to see them play out. So Gracey, why don't we jump in and just kind of get to know you a little bit. I saw another picture of you from college. Where was that? Was that at Kansas? Is that where you were?
Yeah, Kansas State University. I went back, and then all of a sudden Bill Snyder came out of retirement to relieve Ron Prince from ruining our Big 12 chances, and everything was better. So I was a K-Stater, and it was a really fun experience to live in the middle of nowhere, Kansas, being from Kansas City. And it was definitely just an eye-opening time because it was a big city to a lot of people, and I felt like a big fish in a small pond there.
So is that Lawrence, Kansas? Is that where that is?
That's Manhattan, Kansas. So
Manhattan. That is small, isn't it? Right? Wow.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah. So were you always into sports? Did you grow up in a sports family?
Yes, my dad is actually a Hall of Fame rugby player, and he has been raising me as just like this brutal force of a human. He's a Virgo, so of course they have no resilience to anything except when it comes to work. It's like that's all they focus on, and he is no exception. And I really side along with him a lot. So growing up, I'd be listening to sports radio in the car. It'd be giving me a headache. I'm like, why can't we listen to anything else? Instead of going to like fun outings with your kid, he took me to training camp. There's a picture somewhere of Neil Smith holding me as a baby when he was supposed to be at home with me. And so there's just like so many fun things about growing up a Chiefs fan, but a lot of it was never really winning. It was always about just the experience and being at Arrowhead. So I really quickly fell in love with sports. I played basketball not very well, and then I ended up playing lacrosse when I got older. So sports has always been just kind of surrounding me haphazardly, and I turned it into a career in 2017. A little bit before that, I had a podcast, and then 2017, I became the first female sports radio host in Kansas City history. And that was like a very, very big breaking point on ESPN Kansas City. So I wanted to be like, guys, I'm not a stranger to ESPN, and everyone was labeling me a Swiftie. And I'm like, I don't really even listen to her music. So I guess so, sure, whatever. But it was really interesting going from sports media and NFL marketing, which was like my background, to becoming more aware of how life really works and how life is really a game of Wheel of Fortune, and it's a totally different one than we've seen on TV. So really learning the basics about elements and how the timing of the seasons work. And I just started getting more and more, I feel like, esoteric with my searches for information. And it led me to astrology. It led me to a lot of things, really. But astrology is the one that clicked. And I was going through my Saturn return when I found astrology, of course. And nothing really made sense to me at the moment. And my natal Saturn is conjunct Uranus. So you can imagine what the 6th house Saturn return was like. It was a disaster. And I was just like searching for answers. And a lot of people search for answers to kind of justify their behavior. I was looking for it to correct and align my behavior with who I truly was as a person. And that wasn't really coming from my media career at all. I was just getting more and more caricatured as a person. And I wasn't really experiencing truth and just kind of like my vigilante nature. I'm very Robin Hood energy. So I like to infiltrate spaces I'm not supposed to be in and then make sure that people know that I'm not there to play the same games they are.
Wow, that's a lot. What do you think, Al?
I think that's pretty interesting because I personally didn't know about your expansive sports background. And as an average viewer who may have viewed that ESPN segment, basically what they try to do is they try to typecast you. They try to typecast you as astrology chick and not much more else, right? Oh, look at this silly astrology chick. She's a Swiftie. She's got to be a Swiftie. Sort of this mentality where they sort of brush off the astrology. And the funny thing is, I used to be one of those guys. Like I used to be one of those people that was like, oh, here's an astrology chick. That's just silly. But over time, I've spent a lot of time sort of in the geopolitical conspiracy section of the internet. And eventually that led me to astrology. And with sports, it's this one, it's probably the best way to learn astrology, in my opinion. I'm not an expert. I'm intro to astrology. So I do this show and I do another show called Astro Chads, which sort of breaks down the stereotype of, astrology being dominated by women. I think women have a natural predilection towards astrology, but absolutely. when a guy, somebody like Robert or somebody like my buddy Longo, they get into astrology, they can break it down from sort of this perspective that's needed. So I see us sort of in a weird way, because I grew up playing sports in a sort of similar paths where we came to astrology, and once you can't ignore it. You know what I'm saying? Once you get it, you're like, oh my God, this is what they've been hiding from us. There's just so much here, right? So that's kind of where I'm at with the whole situation.
Wow.
Got a question here for you, Gracey.
Yes. All right. So my moon is Gemini and my rising is Cancer. So I do have a 12th house Gemini moon. In Placidus, it is intercepted. So if that is something that kind of hits a little bit harder, it definitely does for me. So yeah, those are my moon and rising.
Oh, good. We don't have a whole science person here.
I'm just so like I love degree theory and I
Me
love
too.
astrology, and I think it's so powerful to have some sort of, I don't know, meaning behind the numbers, because it helps me not be as dyslexic with them by nature.
Yeah. Our guy Al here has Mars in Gemini.
Correct.
That to me is like the boxer placement. That is like the quick with their hands. They're ready to fight at any moment, especially if you have their intelligence.
Yeah.
I have Mars in Cancer. I have the lobster placement.
Oh, cool. Mine is in Capricorn. So I feel like that's where my infiltrate and slice people open thing comes from.
So is your Saturn in Capricorn or Aquarius?
Yes, I have that Capricorn stellium of the 88 kids, and it's goes
Right.
Saturn, or it goes Uranus at 0 degrees, and then Saturn at 2, Neptune at 10, and then Mars at 19. So this
Wow,
stacks.
you are a force, aren't you? You're not going to go away. You got a Mars Saturn. Yeah.
The more I read the comments, I'm like, what are you guys trying to do? Like, this isn't going to rattle my feathers. Like, I have grown up on the internet. This is nothing to me.
Yeah. Gracey, that's one thing I wanted to ask you about, because Rob mentioned to me that people were sending you job applications, as in like get a job, bitch. And I honestly thought that was pretty funny, right?
Yeah.
But I got to ask you about some of the negative feedback you got, because some of it got borderline straight up hateful and insane.
yes.
So I'd like to get your experience on that, because that's something I've personally never dealt with, but you got some blowback.
Yeah,
from
I mean,
your-
I was called in sports radio back in 2015, 2016, before I went onto like mainstream airwaves. I was called the Taylor Swift of sports radio, and I had a lot of racial divide in Kansas City with a couple co-hosts and other sports personalities. So I've had a lot of like random people just project a lot of things onto me. In human design, I'm a 5-1, so there's just nothing but projection with other people.
5-1, what are you, a projector? Or
No, I'm an ego manifester.
you're an ego manifest. Oh, look
Yeah.
out. Wow. Now she's going to take over this fucking show. We better be careful.
So
No,
wait, what exactly
so
does that mean? Ego manifester. What
It
is that?
means that every decision that I make is the best for like my immediate surrounding and the people. in
Okay.
it. It's very much like I've been very much a people pleaser my whole life, and so with
Yeah.
astrology, I kind of found my backbone a little bit. My Aries sun is really the only fire placement outside of my Leo Lilith, so it's all earth, and it's all this very earth, air, and water energy, which can be very drowning. And so a lot of the times when I see negative feedback, like I just muted the conversation. My partner was reading all the comments, and he's just like, yeah, there's a lot of things that people could say in here about you, but job applications and telling you that you're an idiot. And I'm like, yeah, I mean, it's not really that threatening, because if you think that getting a job is like, you know, the peak part of being a human, I have a lot of other questions for you. Like, why? So if me having a job is something that people need to, you know, have invested in this whole narrative of me being an astrology chick, or not having a job, excuse me, that's fine. Let them have it, because I know what I do every day.
So some of those Capricorn places must square your sun, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
It's very exactly square. It's the Sun square Saturn conjunct Uranus thing that I've been trying to navigate, and I've gone to a few different astrologers that have helped so much. And my first astrology reading was very much a pop astrology professional reading from Aliza Kelly, and she was really great in my beginning stage. But I really do feel like there's astrologers for every level, and right now with all this influx, I'm really glad that I did my Astrology 101 guide this summer. And it's a free guidebook that I just have on my website. That's like, just if you want to get into it or understand what the hell I'm saying to you, then just read this and then maybe it'll help. But since I learned everything kind of like on my own, and I'm still learning as much on my own as possible, it kind of feels like to me that this is a time for people to really gain back that autonomy, like you were saying, with the North Node in Aries, and really figure out for themselves what's real and what's not.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, you were built for the conflict. I mean, that's how Aries rolls, right? I mean, you're going to get it. You're going to get it. And all those squares are about how you're going to deal with it. And, you know, it's a attrition. You just wear them down. I mean, I think that's what it's about.
Absolutely. And I really value that insight, because people see Capricorn and they think so self-sacrificing and all this. And it's like, we're really built, like earth signs in general, to get to where we want to go. It's just a different method. And mine is unfortunately through struggle. It's been very public. I was very publicly fired from my radio job because I did not want to behave anymore. And I had purple hair and I was doing whatever the hell I wanted. And it was very like revolutionary at the time. And now people, the things that I was getting chastised for, 6 years ago are now the like forefront of people's careers. So it's just kind of crazy how being a woman in general in a male dominated space, you either thrive because you realize what an anomaly that is, or you get eaten alive. And for me, I was like, this is perfect. This is a great chance to experience self-control, discipline, and figuring it out. I'm glad I got out of it. And being in a female dominated industry, like you talked about with astrology, has been a definite like shift. My part of fortune, the solution degree to it is 7 degrees Virgo, which is represented by a harem. So I really do think a lot of my work will come from a community of women, but I've always gotten along well with sports-minded men. So I'm glad to be here.
So your part of fortune is on my Pluto. I have that.
Oh my gosh, that's amazing.
Yeah. So we could be in each other's harem. What do you think?
Yes, perfect. You would be a great addition to
Yeah.
I love it. I see that Arkansas shirt too. So
yeah, my son goes to Arkansas, so I've been wearing their gear, and unfortunately he was actually they were at Jerry World this weekend, and he was on the jumbotron at Jerry World. He was so excited because he was acting the fool, but not in a bad way. But so he called me up and he was like just slobbering. Yeah, I was just on the jumbotron. So I guess I should watch the game, and I watched the game, and God, I think I could probably coach better than Arkansas's head coach. I have to say, it's a very boring offense.
Yeah, when I was at K-State, they had like Rick Pitino or something, and it was just chaos. So I can't imagine what. I haven't kept up with college football, so I apologize not knowing.
Were you at K-State during the Darren Sproles years?
No, I wish. I was in high school then, and it was just amazing to watch because my really good friend and client, Kelly in Vegas, she's with Barstool. She used to be with Barstool, and now she has her own network, Wager Talk. A lot of my clients / friends are in sports betting, and they're all these powerful women in that. But her and I met through K-State, and she was just in the Darren Sproles era. She was in like the Maxim Hometown Hotties edition and all this stuff. For K-State. So they were in the same circles, I guess, when you're celebrities in a 500-person town.
Interesting. Do you personally get involved with the sports betting at all nowadays?
I used to be so bad that I was betting on Lithuanian basketball in the morning. So my sports node.
That's really bad. That's really bad.
Yeah, I was like using translator services so I can figure out what was going to happen on what days.
Al, you've got your soulmate here, buddy.
Okay, let me ask you a question though. Follow up.
Yes.
Do you nowadays use astrology with sports betting, or do you leave it alone? Or
I leave it alone. I have a strict no betting on the Chiefs policy just because it's the home team, and I just feel it's weird for me to do that. But I have clients that pay me for UFC picks, and that's where I really make bread and butter because it's like I love the UFC charts, and they're so exact, and you can just time up the noon charts for the athletes and put them in there. And UFC has been really telling. I called out Sean O'Malley and also Strickland the last couple of fights. So way better one-on-one. It's so hard to do football astrology with betting just because you have to look at 900 different charts.
There's there's so many variables.
Yeah. And it's like, that's what I really dove into. I would just look at the game chart to start out with, and I'd be like, oh, let me delineate this. And then I'm like, well, how the hell am I going to do this not knowing anything? But one cool thing I got to do last year, which is like really my moment where I'm like, if I could brag about this to anyone, it would be the astrology community. I had like 10 followers on Twitter then. I got Patrick Mahomes' birth time from his mom because I'm so nosy.
Really? What's his rising sign?
Virgo.
He's a double Virgo. That makes sense, actually.
Yep. It's in his 8th house ruled by Aries. You can just see the anger seething out of him sometimes. It's like last night's game. You could really see a lot of that frustration, but it's also the self-accountability too. So we have a lot of the same place. He has the same, his midhaven is my Gemini Chiron. So I just really think that eventually I'll get to tell him about his astrology. I sent his report to his mom, and that's just one thing that was just like a cool personal thing. I have no idea if he's ever seen it, but later that day when I sent the report off, he was at a high school game in my neighborhood, and I'm like, what are the chances with that? So I just took it as eventually, maybe one day.
So he's got a weird voice. Does he have Mercury in the 12th? What's going on with his Mercury?
I'd have to look at it, but I'm pretty sure that he has Mercury in the 1st. I'm pretty sure. Yeah. So he's got a Very intense Libra Venus in the first two. And I think a lot of where he gets his intensity from, even though I know that Venus is not really known as an intense placement, it's more lovey-dovey, but he has a Cancer moon, 0 degrees. That's a very intense placement in my mind. Of course, with the mother connection, I thought that was great since I'm a Cancer rising and I reached out to his mom. So that was fun. But he's got a lot of placements that dictate quiet rage. And I'm really looking a lot at his Saturn return right now. I was predicted his ankle injury last year with my charts just because I saw that that his Saturn was on the midhaven and it was right next to the part of fortune. I'm sitting here like, this is really weird. I don't know what to feel about this. And that's like a lot of the problems with astrology too. Not problems, but great gifts. There's just so many different meanings and interpretations. And that's why I love talking to other people, because I get so pigeonholed in my interpretation sometimes. And to have like a group conversation about astrology is so cool.
Oh, hey, it's Fran's birthday tonight. CC Jones. Where is she? Go. Did she go away? I'm sorry, I cut you off. I just saw
you're
it.
fine.
Yeah.
Anyway,
The one thing I want to ask both of you guys, because I've been observing both of your analysis on the Travis Kelce, Taylor Swift thing. I think you guys disagree, because Rob thinks
I saw that.
Yeah. So Rob thinks that their charts don't align. It's like going to end in disaster effectively. But you seem to think that it's going to work out.
Yeah, I actually have met and interacted with Travis Kelce quite a few times just through my work. And I used to be in NFL marketing. So I introduced him to my dad in like 2014. My dad's girlfriend had a bottle of Seagrams in her purse. And so Travis started calling her Mrs. Jim Beam every time you saw her. So it's just like one of those fun things. But Travis has this innate ability to undervalue himself at almost every turn. And without knowing his birth time, I really think that she brings out this electricity and backbone of him and kind of like eliminates that Scorpio Venus shyness at times. I do see all the squares and I'm sitting here like, man, that could be either building blocks or just total destruction. So
it's either way, right? I mean, it's either way. Either if they're committed, it works. If not, she's got a song waiting for him in about 6 weeks.
Don't you think some of her songs have kind of been manifesting this relationship though? With just
I don't follow her content all that often. I mean, it's a superficial kind of understanding that if things go south with her boyfriend or boyfriends, they usually show up in her songs. That's what I know.
Yes, that's very Venusian of her too.
Yeah, I know her hits, and I think that Travis is potentially the guy she's looking for, because he's this all-American strong guy. I feel like she's had some whack losers in the past. And say what you want about Travis. You can say he's this or that. He's a winner.
And I liked how you guys talked about him being the alpha in the locker room. And it's like, he is, you know, and I think that latest episode they did with Chris Jones just shows just like the hilariousness of his Sag Moon to begin with. And to bring that to a relationship, she's been with all these like dinky little guys that have just kind of had like these wayward opinions about who she is as a person. And when you're with a man who's not intimidated by a woman with her own career and her own kind of gusto in life, it really shows. And I don't think he's the type to get intimidated by that, which is what she's had for so long. And, you know, her being back in New York and being kind of on the East Coast, separating it, you know, his last girlfriend. I did get a lot of flack for mentioning her, but like around Kansas City, it's just been one of those things where her energy was just very ungrateful to people in the Kansas City community. So I did have some insight on that. So it's not like I'm just talking out of my ass on that one. My interactions with her were very just short and superficial and not great and not very pleasant. So I think that he wants nice and he wants somebody that he can really see as a wife and a mother. And she's kind of selling the all-American dream. You talked about the New England thing, about how she's kind of that back east, like privileged white girl that, you know, hasn't had the struggle. He grew up in Cleveland Heights, fitting in with these kids who never really had much anyways, and growing up from the dirt, from a very blue collar family. It is very much what she talks about in a lot of her songs. But it's something that I would really kind of like see if it lasts past, you know, Pluto going direct in Aqua and Aquarius, excuse me, I've been shortening everything, around January 21st. So it's like, I feel like her 1 degree Aquarius Venus is really going to be tested at that point. It's either going to be an elevation in the relationship or it's over.
Right. My buddy Leo King says the Swiftie relationship is doomed, or any relationship that starts now. So I think he's just putting Swifty into a doom bucket.
I think what men bring to the table in astrology, which is so cool, is this very unique and not brash, but honest perspective. And when we get our emotions involved, not like I have any emotions with my Gemini moon, but when I process them in 3 to 5 days, and I think I have some, it's interesting to see just the kind of like the feedback. I think it's a great social experiment. How you feel about Taylor Swift and Travis Kelce is really telling about your mindset. I know a lot of people being really angry about it. It's just like, okay, well, turn off the TV, like go do something else. Like somebody was saying, don't you feel bad that you're getting internet bullied? I'm like, no, because I can turn off my phone. It's not that hard. So I have a very kind of like detached way of looking at it, but people get mad about everything. So,
well, it seems to me that and maybe this is something that we could both agree on, is that with her Mars conjuncting his Venus and her sun conjuncting his moon, she's kind of running the show.
Yeah. And all that. I mean, if Wolverine and Deadpool were in my box and hanging out with my family, I would want to be joining them. So I don't know how he's just doing it on the sidelines. I get that he has a job and everything, but it's kind of cool to see him get that recognition and kind of grow out of his shell a little bit, because when I met him, he was super shy and reserved.
Yeah. So is there anything in Travis's chart that would indicate a massive power play? Because, let's not beat around the bush here. Taylor Swift's a billionaire.
Yeah.
Travis does well, but she's got that big B. So if he were to marry her and start a family with her, that would be a huge fucking power move, right?
Absolutely.
So is there anything in his chart that indicates that?
I think it's his Saturn and her Mercury conjunction that would be something that is to watch, because that Saturn Mercury, I know that Sun and Moon you guys talked about being the marriage indicator, but I think a lot of the time somebody that balances out your thought process and can kind of like big picture it a little bit. I do kind of worry about that a little bit with the Mercury part, and it's being in Capricorn, just because Capricorns aren't really known 100% to be big picture, wide open. They're a little bit more tunnel vision and focused on the goal at hand. I think the stability could be there for sure, but it's like, again, he might start to see dealing with her mental and emotional state or her wealth as a burden at times, and that's where I see a little bit of that disconnect. Plus I think his Virgo Mercury falls in her 10th house, so it's like he's going to feel like he's kind of in the spotlight, and she has no placements around that to kind of cushion it. So his mental could be left out in the open. She could just kind of take over the show with star power, as you guys talked about.
So we're dealing with a very switched on chat here that knows a fair amount about astrology, but really goes into some dark rabbit holes. And Diane says, I don't believe for a second they're having a legitimate relationship, and that this seems to be more like a business deal or some kind of conscript. Now, astrologically, you cannot deny the Venus-Mars conjunction. Like, there's like serious sizzle. And if you've ever been in a relationship where your Mars has been engaged with another person's Venus or vice versa, there's chemistry there, right? So, and then the Sun-Moon thing is also significant. And, right, it just so happens that at the same time he starts to date Taylor Swift, he does a Pfizer commercial, he does the Bud Light commercial, right? All of a sudden, Travis Kelce is elevated.
Yeah,
and it feels in some ways a little bit like an arranged marriage, right? Mm-hmm. And that Mercury-Saturn conjunction, which is very formal and contractual, might play into this. What are your thoughts around something like that?
Absolutely. There's not for a second. I worked in an agency with NFL for a long time, and I would arrange football camps and manage all the football camps for our athletes that we had. And there's something of arranged marriages kind of needing to be in place in the NFL anyways. I know that you guys have touched on that before, just the financial advantage people try to take. I think Trevor Bauer came out today with a huge expose on everything that he went through with his MLB case with the woman that framed him.
He's a Capricorn. He's another Capricorn.
Yeah. I mean, there's a lot of justice being served for Capricorns right now. I'm like, get Pluto out of there, but I'll stop with that one. I really do feel that you're onto something there, especially with that, if that her birth time actually being 5/17, which I believe it is, and that being in her second house. I mean, having for Venus and Mercury in there already with those outer planets, it's going to feel contractual no matter who she gets involved with. So for it to be a guy who's singing and dancing to what his agents do out in LA, I've seen a lot more puppeteering happening, and I've seen a lot more people realizing that some of this stuff seems a little scripted. I think Damar Hamlin was a huge one that people were like, what the hell is this?
Yeah.
I mean, I saw so many breakdowns of that situation. And, you know, for people not knowing that the Super Bowl is a huge human trafficking event, I did an expose about that on Instagram.
She's right in here with us, Al.
Yeah,
yeah,
she fits right in, man. See, I want to mention this real quick. This is why Sirius Sports is the best sports show out there, because what did ESPN do? They showed some of your tweets. Meanwhile, you have a radio NFL background. Hello.
Oh, yeah.
Sirius
And you know what the
Sports.
great part about that is you talk about synchronicities, and
Yeah.
the person who brought up my work was actually JJ Watt. And so I looked at his chart, and he was born the exact same day as me.
He was JJ was kind to you.
Yeah, he's a March
was
22nd baby. He understands. But even that date, March 22nd to 322, that's very occult. So like people could say one March 22nd person to another March 22nd person initiating something on ESPN. And I got that response too. Just from like a few of my friends that were like, don't you find that a little bit strange? I'm like, of course I do. I find everything strange. But you know, there's also that oversaturation of information. If you think about something too much or too long, good God, if astrology is not a place to just completely put yourself into astropsychosis, like there are things that you could look at for hours. I mean, I haven't even studied the depth of my own chart at times. Like I just looked at my Pallas Athena placement for the first time, and it's a child born out of a golden egg is the Sabian symbol. And I'm like, yeah, I felt like that as an only child that was like, you know, very much my parents' only kid and their bread and butter and just their focus. I'm like, man, that's crazy. And it's just like you see all these synchronicities and these things and this timing, and you have to wonder what it all means. And I'm 100% on board with the let's ponder about this stuff for a little bit more.
So let's get back to the child trafficking. I didn't mean to really cut you off, because that's a really important. It's an important point. So when you dug down into that and you wrote about it, what were you able to find, and give us some examples of what you came up with?
Well, the few times that I have been involved in major behind the scenes activity at NFL games, I've noticed the sheer amount of underground tunnels, the sheer amount of entrances in and out of places. So that's really where I started with a lot of these Super Bowl stadiums. Not only are these cities just like completely and totally flocked with security, this private security, these people that are, you see them and you're like, you're an undercover police officer, and you can tell a lot of the times they don't blend in with people. There's a lot of people that are hired for contract, and a lot of these promotional models and promotional people that are just really freaking pretty, and they can hold up a can of Pepsi and be like, you want this, don't you? And they sell all these things and they do all these things. A lot of these people will sell their soul for any chance at getting close to fame. And I didn't realize how much of it was really in the sports world until, you know, I started getting into it more or less as a fan and more in the business. And the amount of children that go missing at these things, the amount of children that go missing in the cities leading up to these events. I'm really grateful that Kansas City hasn't been a Super Bowl city, just because we already have a huge amount of human trafficking here. That's a huge problem to begin with. And paying in more attention to the ins and outs and the people and the networks and the corporations that own these networks and the people behind them, you just have to keep going. And there's no amount of information. Start looking at people's LLCs that hire the media broadcasting teams, these independent journalists that get credentials. It's so hard to get credentials. And then there's these people who don't really know what they're doing in the media space, credentialed, and you're like, why are you here? And so I started asking a lot of questions. I was very much involved with the side of local sports media, where I was the only woman in the room a lot of times. So there were things said and done around me that I don't think would have been done around most people. But because I was able to be in those spaces, I could see with my own eyes that things weren't really right. And when I say not right, it's not by the book. It gives you a weird feeling. Like, why are these young girls being pushed around like this? Why are these promo models being paid $500 an hour? Like, what is actually going on with this? Who owns these companies that are, flying these women out? And just all the different people that you would meet that had hands in so many other industries and none sports. Like I hardly ever met anybody that was really involved with sports when I was working behind the scenes in sports.
That's interesting. Have you ever heard of Kathy O'Brien?
Mm-mm.
Okay, so I'm going to send you down a rabbit hole. Kathy O'Brien was somebody who was traumatized and trafficked from a very early age. And her book, Transformation of America, is about her life as a MK Ultra trafficked sex slave.
Wow.
And there's a fair amount of sports that shows up in her book. She talks about people like Tommy Lasorda and Nolan Ryan, and basically what they have found, what she shared with everybody, and she names names, and she has never been sued. Nobody has ever come after her. And the sort of the technology is that she's traumatized, and when she's traumatized, they slip in these programs like Wizard of Oz programming or Snow White programming, right? And so what they'll do is they'll have these phrases from Snow White or Wizard of Oz. Those are like the key codes. So if you know what Kathy O'Brien's key codes are, you can say them, and she will partition and go into another part of her brain that's been programmed to do whatever, to say yes to everything that you want her to do, right? So the reason I'm bringing this up is the idea that what you actually might be witnessing with these gorgeous Pepsi girls might actually be a lot more insidious than just a pretty face holding a can of Coke.
Yeah, and that's how a lot of them seem to recruit, is from within, and it just gets younger and younger. These kids, they go to neighborhoods that are not known for being financially stable, and they find people that are able to, perform and look a certain part, or, just like it sounds like with Kathy O'Brien, for her not to have any lawsuits or blowback on that says enough right there. And the things that we say and do as people that speak out about these things, it's so important to have that being rooted in truth. And when you're rooted in truth, it's really hard to argue with someone. So I think that's really interesting. I would definitely be looking into her for sure.
Oh, her book is really compelling. I had to put it down 3/4 of the way through because it was just getting so dark, because she has a daughter.
Yeah.
And her daughter gets put through a lot of this stuff. And I'm just like, I can hold a dark space. I'm a Scorpio rising, but I had kind of reached my limit about 3/4 of the way through. I want to ask you, I want to bring something up, and now you can jump in and kind of chime in on this. If you notice, Super Bowls are given to cities with new stadiums, and the new stadiums probably have the infrastructure built into them that's based on what you're talking about, Gracey.
Absolutely. And I found out that the Arrowhead has these massive tunnels that were sealed about 15 years ago. They're still underneath the stadium. But the amount of just in general sketchy behavior around sporting events, like I don't understand how people think that sporting events aren't ritualistic in nature. Like we're all standing around in a circle, cheering on people, singing songs together, and energy harvesting everywhere. But there's just so much that I think that people live under this dome of sorts, and they reach their limits when they start seeing numbers in a circle with some symbols. It's like almost like something just completely triggers them. I've never seen people react so strongly to something they don't understand quite like I did with that astrology tweet.
Wow. Yeah, I mean
that really triggered a ton of people. Like, wow.
Yeah. It's interesting they reacted so negatively and vitriolic towards it, right? It kind of makes you think about how much they've been conditioned to ignore the very sky in which we can look up at. You know what I'm saying? To literally ignore the stars and instead partake in this false worship, this false idol worship ritual of, athletic stars or movie stars, right? And, you mentioned, the sports arena and game as a ritual. It's pretty low vibrational. I hate going to those things, man. I hate sports fan culture, to be honest with you. I love sports, and I think it's a great way to learn astrology, and I think it's something I grew up doing and playing and participating in and really enjoying. And to this day, I love to watch college football, basketball, whatever. But the ritual itself, it's all this, natural tendencies of tribalism. And I just want to say, like, is there anything more low class and just pathetic than getting drunk and fighting at an NFL game? I mean, that is the lowest form of humanity.
People
You know
have
what I'm saying?
fights in these parking lots. Like Arrowhead
Yeah.
has had multiple people dead, and including a player shoot himself in the parking lot in front of our
Wow.
head coach. Like that happened in 2012. Like there are some dark energigy in general
Yeah.
that have been attached to these things. I can't imagine in places like New York and LA.
What
I
about the
think Philly
dark?
is the
What about the
worst.
dark place? I'm sorry, I'll cut you off.
I was saying, just in terms of sports fans, Philadelphia is notoriously the worst, but the
Okay.
Northeast sports fan in general, it's not great. There's something about the cities of Boston, New York, Philadelphia, where the
Yeah.
sports fans are just very rude and they just scream out disgusting things. And I can see how a lot would get past these people, especially a massive group of these people. You know what I mean? Like, yeah, things like that could occur in plain sight and they would have no clue, right?
Absolutely.
I was going to ask you, what do you think of sort of the really dark Piscean energy around Andy Reid and like what's gone on with his kids? Like it's really dark. What's your take on that?
I have been struggling with this since probably his son hitting a 5-year-old and almost ending her life, rear-ending a family on the side of a highway. I've covered Chiefs through various sources, and I've covered college football through various sources, and I've never seen somebody quite like Andy Reid that has such a finesse on crowds and appealing to people in such a like good guy, like just salt of the earth kind of way. But I was asked about this last year, I believe, and I said I have a really hard time, not necessarily worshiping, because I've never really done that with a head coach, but idolizing this man who claims his faith is of the utmost importance to him, to where he lives his life in a different way than most people. His Mormon faith is very big for him, but yet when he spends all this time and energy coaching football, he leaves this whole part of his life behind, and his sons have had to sacrifice, one, his own life, and two, the other one taking Adderall and drinking at work just so he could hang out with his dad. Like, are we kidding each other here? Like, it's not what the Mormon faith, quote unquote, preaches.
Well, I think we'd have to have a different discussion and dissertation about the Mormon faith, right?
Well,
There's what we see, and then there's the behind the curtain side of things. But drugs and alcohol wise, you're completely right.
And
right?
I think
it's not part of the faith. So what is really going on? What is really going on there? It always seemed fairly dark to me. And his first kid did seem like a sacrifice.
It did. I felt really, really rough about that first, child passing away, because, you hear about these things that these coaches, oh, they work so hard, they're around the clock, they're so dedicated, they're so football focused. And it's like, when did we lose sight of the family? If my child were to be in a situation where they were an addict and I was either enabling it or allowing it to happen in the home, just because at least it wouldn't happen outside, I would be questioning everything about where I was as a parent. He doubled down on going back to football. He even went harder, and then his child almost kills somebody because he's all hopped up on these pills and in a company vehicle. Like, I know that family is never going to have to worry about money from now on with the Hunt family and the Chiefs organization in general, but what they had to go through was just disgusting. And that little girl, I reached out to her family the moment that I found out the name and the GoFundMe and everything, and I just asked how she was, and they were in shock, of course, but just the lack of the way it was handled around here, I was so torn as a Chiefs fan. I almost gave up on the Chiefs, to be honest with you. I almost walked away from being a football fan completely just because of Kansas City sports in general. The media here has framed so many athletes for things they haven't done, and I've been very vocal about that too. The Tyreek Hill situation with the child abuse. I knew people, personal accounts in that whole ordeal, and he was being, ostracized and completely and totally framed by his child's mother. And we had to just sit back and eat that one. So like the media did a terrible job on that. The one guy that called out Andy Reid for not having discipline because he said, well, how could Andy Reid have discipline to win a Super Bowl if his own child died? And I'm just sitting here like, I don't think we're supposed to say that on air here on Kansas City. This guy is like a legend and an icon here. But, the more I thought about it, this guy lost his career and he lost his entire like radio empire that he had built for the last 25 years for saying this. It was national news that this guy got fired. And I'm like, okay, but when are we going to talk about this? Because there's not a great track record here. And he has Chronos at 27 degrees Taurus, and there was a huge full moon at that degree. I think it was in 2022. And I was hoping that there would be some sort of like giant revelation, or I was hoping there'd be some sort of spiritual moment there. And I think really, if anything, they've just doubled down on covering up and hiding more problems.
Yeah.
And it's not, it doesn't sit well with me at all.
Jason Whitlock, who used to write for the Kansas City Star, came out really hard on Andy. And unlike the guy who lost his gig in Kansas City, Jason's already established.
Yeah.
And he can say what he wants. But he was very critical around Andy Reid and said, should we really start to look at Andy Reid differently because of these events that have happened in his life? Jason's got kind of a weird chart. He's got Mars and Libra with Venus and Aries in opposition.
Man, Jason Whitlock used to have me blocked on Twitter, and he unblocked me, I think, a couple of years ago. So that's amazing. That makes a lot of sense now.
Yeah. So, what's next for you on your astrological path? What are you working on? What are you doing? Are you podcasting? Where else can people find you?
I am going to be mostly on, I think my social media of choice is going to be Twitter for a while, just because I do like the ability. I guess they're testing live streaming on Twitter now too. I have a couple of guidebooks in the works, of course. I'm just trying to get back into the swing of things because I took the summer off after publishing my Astrology 101 guide, but I just want to keep adding to that. I have this really cool idea to do a book, of course. I think everybody gets into astrology and they're like, I have to write a book about this. This is amazing. But I have a 9th house Pisces Mercury, so there could be something along those lines. I really just feel like I'm a student of everything all the time. I've never felt like I've mastered anything in this ancient science. I'm just out here trying to like navigate the waters and learn as much as I can. But I love collaborating. Podcasts would be great. There's a few people that have reached out, and I love doing podcast appearances because you guys do all the work and I just pop in. So it's like, okay, perfect. Like it's well taken care of. But the more that I can interact with people, a lot of people have been chiming in on what I should do next. And I love the pop culture commentary because I think these people are, to be spectated and they are to be discussed. And if we can learn from their placements and these things, people give me shit all the time for, stalking celebrities. I'm like, I promise you, I do not think about these people for more than just their placements and the timing of things. Because if we can, as a collective, like look at mundane astrology, like it's an actual helpful tool and can really break through barriers of teaching. And collectively, I've never seen the response that was so polarizing, I guess, with my tweet. People were like, it's on ESPN, and other people were like, oh no, our secrets are coming out. And I've always been along the side of, wouldn't life be better if astrology was more available and a language that everyone spoke?
I'd agree with that. Yeah. Hey, before you go,
Yes.
our guy Al here, he's a hardworking man. He's a blue collar guy. He's also a novelist. He has one book published. Very well-rounded person, but he's not really looking for somebody. But if Al was looking for somebody, I got his chart right here. What would you say about this, Gracey? What would you say about this chart?
Wow. Let's hear it.
All right. So we're gonna put Al right on the spot. I love it. So you having a 22-degree Virgo sun, that to me just describes how intense you are. I love the 22-degree just because I've always been drawn to it. But that's that like critical self, and to have that opposite where your physical manifestation of love with Pisces would be, I find that really interesting because those last degrees of Pisces are the most romantic degrees in my mind. A lot of people are like, oh, the death degrees. And I'm like, the Sabian symbols really show the opposite degree of your sun can show you a lot. And like as an Aries, I'm with the Libra. So I always like to go with like that opposite energy. So I would be interested to see you with the Pisces for sure. Having an Aries vertex like that could mean an Aries could come along and just like, I don't know. I love Virgo and Aries together. That's always been me. My dad and I, he's a Virgo, I'm an Aries, and we just have this fun banter. And I think they both can kick each other's ass enough to kind of like keep up with each other. Let's see, your moon. I love this already. Having a Leo moon of any sort is just like you have great hair too. So good job there.
Thank you.
But you really have this like Lion King energy. Like you really do need to be catered to emotionally, and you need to be put in that spotlight, because I don't think that there's anyone that can be like, all right, let's just dull your emotions and let's push them to the side. They're going to have to be a woman that can really live up to that. You have high standards. You definitely have high standards. I have a Virgo friend that has a 23-degree Virgo sun, and this is very interesting. I'm like over here trying to play matchmaker, so I'll stop. But
no, keep going. You're doing great. I love it.
A Virgo sun with an Aquarius moon, and I love her so much, in a Sag rising. So I'm just looking at this and I'm like, this is so interesting. I love your Pluto placement too. I think that's such a responsible and also transformational thing. I think you're going to be freeing yourself financially in the long run.
Let's go. That's a fact. Yes, that is so true. Okay.
I love this, but your Saturn too, I feel like you've gone through some shit, like home life. So you're ready for somebody that's stable enough to where you don't have to, they're not a liability. I don't think you like liabilities of people. You're not a project person.
Yeah. Virgos will cut people off, man. Yeah. Virgos are like kind of ruthless like that. I've been on the other end of it too. I've been cut off by Virgos, and it's like, whoa, that was legit. You really did it. You know what I mean?
That's amazing. Yeah, my dad cuts people off, but then it'll be like 2 weeks later, they'll say something nice to him because he has Leo, Venus, and Pluto conjunct. And he'll be like, okay, I forgive you. It's like you just play into their ego. And
hey, what about this? What about this Neptune creeping up here in the 7th house, and then the true node also coming? I don't know. It feels like partnership is on the rise here for Mr. Al. What do you think?
I like that. And I think Neptune, of course, is just like going to open up your mind. Like, of course, you might not, get married until much later, or you might not find this person for a while. Like 2026 could be really, really cool for you. I think Neptune going into Aries will be like such a magnanimous event for you. And maybe by that point, you're going to have that more of that autonomy that you want in your life. And I think the more you're able to like go with the flow and like free yourself from thinking that you're stuck one way or stuck doing one thing, or because people know you as one thing, that you can't just shift and go and be chameleon and very mercurial. I think that there's a lot to be said with that Neptune transit of freeing yourself and not taking yourself so seriously.
So Al,
it's all spot on. I mean, it's all accurate. This is how like you're crushing it. And it's like in terms of freeing myself, right? That's something I think about. That's something I obsess over. So like I have this construction gig. I work, 5 days a week, but I'm working on my second book, right? I'm already a published author. So I wrote this book. Yeah. This is so Virgo, isn't it? It's ridiculous.
Yes. I love this so much.
Yeah.
I can't
wait to read this. It's called The Charter, A Millennial Journey Out of Hip Hop Hypnosis. So like people just hit me up. People who read it hit me up and say like, oh, I laughed out loud. I've never laughed out loud that much reading a book. It's so funny. It's so good, but it's really a generational classic because, I'm 33 now, and my generation and the generation below me, nothing but hip hop music. And our society isn't going to improve until people snap out of hip hop hypnosis.
Do they like not realize what's behind hip hop? Like that's
right. It's just it's also like a sacred cow for a lot of guys because it's like, oh, don't take away my hip hop. These guys are entrepreneurial, just amazing guys. And listening to this filth, it motivates me with these, drums and these good beats and this good chorus. But meanwhile, it's just, you're inundated with the most disgusting trash ever. So It's just,
I love it. And I'm just sitting, I don't listen to as much. Like literally all I listen to now is frequencies, but the hip hop, like him, Trina. I had these idols.
Trina.
That I didn't even know what the hell they were talking about. I'm 12 years old and I heard the song Lay Low for the first time. I rapped every single word, of course, except the N one. I'm not going into that route. Rapped every single word as a kid. Didn't even know what I was talking about. I was listening to Jay-Z one day. My dad goes, "What the hell is this? Beat the charges like Rocky? You turn that shit off right now." And I'm like, "Oh, okay."
Yeah. Well, so here's the thing though. When people around our age, or anybody really, they snap out of hip hop hypnosis, sky's the limit, literally. You know what I mean? So it's like, once you let go of those false idols, whether it's through sports culture or your favorite musician, is when you can finally see clearly. So that's what the book is about. It's an allegory. There are these friends that grow up as hip hop fans. There are these cops trying to figure out the whole thing. These rappers trying to kill each other, these evil record executives like plotting against everybody. All these intertwined plots. So, but in terms of what you were saying, in terms of freeing myself, it's like, I'm going to do it through that. So I'm working super hard on weekends on my second book. And my second book is about a surf assassin. He's the surfer who kills people. It's just, it's just funny. It's like, that's my lane. So like everything you were saying about the chart is spot on. I mean, it's all accurate. The high standards thing is very true. I mean, I think it was Chris Rock. Actually, I think he had some good analogy where he said like, for women, it's really hard to go down in terms of lifestyle.
Yes, and lifestyle.
Yeah. But for men, it's really hard to go down in terms of looks. So it's like, you know what I mean? So it's like, but that is so true. It's really, really hard. So the high standards thing is true. Everything you were saying is true. And that's why I love astrology. It's awesome.
And hey, Chris Rock also said the gym. He said only suckers work. And you know what? That fits into the whole job application shit I was getting. That fits into yours. It's like,
well, here's the thing. I work so hard, so I have cash to do what I want. You know what I'm saying? But like, I'm not free right now. So that's why I'm working so insanely hard. The Mars and Virgo thing. I mean, no, I'm sorry. What was it?
Mars and Gemini.
No. But like last month or so.
Oh yeah,
Mars
and Virgo. Yeah.
Oh my God. And that was another confirmation for me. I was like, oh my God, this astrology stuff is legit. It can no longer ever be ignored. Ever.
I was pushing that hard.
Yeah. And you were spot on. Yeah. And the Astro weather, I watch Rob's show like 3 or 4 days a week because of the Astro weather. It's imperative. Right.
Absolutely.
And Gracey, unbelievable guest, blew my expectations away. Outstanding.
Thank you so much. You guys have
we gotta have you back on. You were great.
Hey, I'm available. My whole thing right now, I'm in a 12th house year, so I'm just going with the flow. That's it.
Okay,
so whatever's close to me, if it's McAfee show, cool. If it's JJ Watt getting a chart reading done for me so he can actually understand why he's not happy in retirement, that's another option too.
Right. There you go. Well, we'll call your number. We'll bring you off the bench.
Yes, thank you so much.
And maybe so this is kind of a meet and greet, get to know you. Maybe the next time we get together, we'll get down with some charts and we'll look at some players and maybe we'll get in some predictive models.
Yeah.
So that'll be a lot of fun.
I would love that.
Yeah.
I'll be watching next time.
Well, thanks for being here. And I have your link that I posted inside the chat. It's also in the show notes. And if we have to tweak it, we'll do that. And then people can find you on Twitter as well at North Astrology, right?
You got it. I'll be there.
Okay. All right, Gracey. Thanks. Great job. We'll see you next time.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. Have a good one.
Pleasure. She was awesome, dude. Oh my God. I didn't know she was that aware of all different types of things. She's aware of the light, but also the dark. She's
sharp, man. She's sharp as a tack.
So,
and she's got some vision. And she's got a good sense of humor. I wanted to ask her more about her father being in the Rugby Hall of Fame. Rugby is not an American sport. So I'm wondering, is her father even American? Mm-hmm. Right? Next time she's on, I'll ask her that question.
And the thing is, another thing is that I have so many friends that are so into UFC, and I'm not that into UFC, but all the guys who are into UFC also bet on it. And I think they're doing themselves a disservice to discount astrology, especially when a chick like that is doing astrological readings on these UFC fighters. And she seems to be doing well, because she bets a little bit herself. And I think that's very interesting.
The one time I made decent money off a bet was when I bet on Tyson Fury. to beat
Wow.
Deontay Wilder. And I looked at the astrology. It's like, this guy's going to win, easy.
Mhm.
And I had so I had him for the win, and then I had a side bet for the round. I think it was off by 2 rounds for the round. Had I got the round as well, I would have really cashed out. But yeah, I mean, when you have like mono y mono, or you're just dealing with 2 charts, and what she brought up and what Mark has brought up also is the multiplicity of the variables when you go through all the different charts, and even the astrology of the day, which plays a role in all of it. But yeah, I'm wondering if, because when you get into one-on-one sports, could you do it in tennis? I think you could, because you're dealing with, one-on-one, and you're looking at 2 charts. And I'm wondering about golf, right? You're just looking at one guy's chart during a particular 3-day stretch, right?
Yeah. Well,
Those would
you
be
gotta watch.
really interesting
What you
dives.
do is you would do the Thursday and Friday charts to see who's going to make the cut, and then from there make your bet on who's going to win. For Saturday and Sunday.
Or you could just put your guy out front all 3 days, right? Go,
Right. Or I
this
think
is
it's
my
4
guy.
typically.
Well, this is my guy, 4 days, start to
Yeah.
finish. But you could also chime in. I guess you could go, second day, first day, second day, maybe not the third day, but
Yeah, that'd be. Oh my God.
yeah. So you got to get up early. What's your big work day looking like tomorrow, big dog?
Oh man, I'll be in a very liberal city, very very liberal, and we're doing a project, and it's got to get done. Yeah, there are more interesting things happening than I can say, but it's just got to get done. I got to be up at like 5, and it's like 10 o'clock here, so it's like it takes me a couple hours to wind down after podcasting. So
Yeah.
is the next guest lined up? This Aquarius?
Yeah, Glenn will be here in 3 minutes, so you're welcome to meet him, or you
Okay.
can leave, whatever you want to do. I know you got to get to bed, so
Yeah.
the ball is in your court.
Okay. Is there anything else I wanted to get to while I'm here?
What about Mac Jones and Bill Belichick in the meltdown?
Dude, Mac is a boring player. I mean, Mac is like a systems quarterback. He makes the right throws, and it just sucks to watch. I got to be honest. It's just not. And here's the thing: what more can people from New England ask for from the New England Patriots organization? It's never going to be that good again, ever. You know what I mean? With the Brady, Belichick, and all those years, it was incredible, to be honest. Like, it was fun, and it's never going to happen again. And I think people need to come to terms with that. And I think that they ought to consider, I don't want to say tank, but it's like, dude,
I think Belichick's done.
He should be done. He should just go have fun. He's done everything.
He doesn't know how
do.
to have fun. He just broke up with his longtime girlfriend. He doesn't really, although he did go on tour with Bon Jovi one time. I thought that was kind of interesting.
Man,
right? He hung out with Bon Jovi on their European tour.
I don't know if, like, here's the thing. I don't know if he could retire. I think he'd be obsessed with football either way. So he's like thinking maybe he'll ride it out. But he doesn't seem to have the obsessive, intense need to win. I feel like they lose nowadays.
I think he does, but he doesn't have the players. I mean, Tom Brady was the equalizer. He was the force multiplier. Mm-hmm. And I think it's pretty clear who benefited more from that relationship. I think Belichick benefited more from Brady being there than, I mean, Brady did have, he had the good season, the Super Bowl season in Tampa. The next season they made the playoffs. Mm-hmm. And then, he had the season from hell. So he at least represented better post Belichick than Belichick did post Brady. I think he's done. I think Bill Belichick's done. I think the NFL is kind of, and I think he's really bright. Don't get me wrong. He's a really bright guy. And he's not a guy that can pigeonhole himself. Like he's not just a defensive guy. Like when Randy Moss showed up, they set all kinds of records, right? So he can be adaptable, but it just feels like he's done, mm-hmm. right? And he has a really limited coaching tree, so he doesn't have a lot of fresh inputs. He's got Bill O'Brien back, and he's got Matt Patricia, Joe Judge back. Like all those guys have been there before. Yeah. He's not going to learn anything new from them.
Right.
Right?
Okay. So here's what I have to ask you. Tom Brady, do you see him getting into coaching?
Not at all.
Not at all. Why is that?
No, because he's one of those guys who is too big to coach. He's too
No,
big.
no, no. Like him becoming a coach, Tom Brady.
No. You know why? Because if you're a coach in the NFL, you
Yeah.
got to be at the fucking facility at 5 a.m. in the morning,
Okay.
right? 5 a.m. He's got kids that are school age,
Okay.
and he's played a lot of football without being around those kids as much.
So
And
could you see him pulling a
he's got to split them with Giselle. So
Okay.
as a father who went through a separation and a divorce, that time with your kids is golden. It's really important. Like, you just don't want to hire a nanny because you got to go wake up at 5 a.m. and go drop a game plan for your next week's opponent, right?
Mhm.
No, I don't think if anything, he'll be an owner of a team.
Okay.
That's what I think. He's a Leo. He'll
about-
be an owner of a team.
Okay. What about 8 to 10 years from now when his kids are in college age? Could you see him pulling a Deion Sanders and becoming a collegiate coach?
No.
Wow. Okay.
I just don't think he's wired that way. I mean, he could be somebody that Shador Sanders could pick up the phone and talk to about buying a fucking Maserati. He could be that guy.
Okay.
I think he's got ownership in his future. He bought a stake of the Las Vegas Raiders. And at some point, I could totally see Mark Davis aging out. I don't think he has any kids. So I could see him age out, and there's Tom Brady,
Mhm.
right? And he's got Tom Brady sitting around, and, sure, Tom, I'll sell you the team, right? And he becomes majority owner of the Las Vegas Raiders. I could definitely see that.
Okay.
Other than that, I don't get a clear picture of Tom Brady in the future.
Okay.
It's like somebody with his popularity, if he wanted to run for senator of Massachusetts, easy. Probably win.
Mhm.
If he wanted to run for office in Florida, he would win. But he's not wired that way. He's not political. I don't know really what he's into besides Tom, his TB12 training program. I just see him more as being in an ownership role.
Okay. And
Yeah.
perhaps getting psychotically competitive about golf. I could see that. You know what I mean? Because here's the thing. I just see a competitive drive in him that's still
That's
there.
true. Yeah.
You know what I mean? And it's like, it needs an outlet because I don't think he's going to be happy, with a microphone. I don't think that's him. I don't think I think he'll get restless in that role. I think he needs to be competing and performing in some way, some capacity.
You'll appreciate this comment from Dr. Yu. He's going to be coaching models on how to open their throats.
Oh, wow. All right.
We got a Joni sighting here tonight. Dr.
Joni's
Joan.
in.
Dr. Joan. That's my GF. She's here.
Okay.
Let's see. Yeah, I just don't know. Brady? I mean, where do you go after you've, reached the top of the mountain
Mhm.
numerous times in there's no competitive, there's no competitive equivalency to that.
Right.
There's none. I mean, the only thing I would think would be like fucking extreme big game hunting or something like that. And I just don't see Tom Brady as being an extreme big game hunter.
Mhm.
That's not him. Where do you go? Where do you go to get that competitive edge, to get that dose of serotonin and all the reuptake stuff and all that adrenaline? Not many areas of life actually afford that. That's why a lot of these ex-athletes have a very hard time adapting after their careers, because there's nothing really as intense, gratifying, and bonding as sports has been for them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. All right, man. Well, it was a great show. I'm looking forward to next week as always. I'm looking forward to this next guest. If
So
you're
am I, if
listening
he
right
ever
now.
fucking shows up.
Oh, okay. Yeah. So I was like, I don't want to leave you hanging here if this guy.
That's all right. Hey, I do
like-
this all the time. I can carry the show while you're gone.
Facts. All right, man.
Have a
I
great day,
walk all the
man.
time.
Take care. See you out.
All right, guys. I'll see you soon.
The
Later.
great Al Dog.
See ya.
Gonna be pounding that hammer, that pavement tomorrow, creating the infrastructure for America. All right, let me check my guest, see if he's here. Belichick will get into lacrosse. Hold on. Hold on. Okay, I've got to adapt here. Our guest is technically challenged. Hold on. Let's see. Here we go. Let's try it like this. All right, there we go. I just sent him the link. All right. Let's see. Where are we? I like my nickname. Fantastic. That's a good nickname. Should we play a birthday song for CC? You know, we do the birthday songs here. We're all about the birthday song. Let's play our birthday song. Birthday song. Let's see what we got. Nothing that will bust us for copyright infringement. No copyright infringement here. So we'll have to skip the Beatles. We'll have to skip Altered Images. We'll have to skip Stevie Wonder. We're going to have to do something a little obscure. You guys know that I played a lot of birthday songs. 2 Chainz and Kanye West, we're going to skip that. The Baggins Birthday Blues, Moanin' Mo Baggins. We might have to do that one. Let's see. Birthday Sex. Let's see. Happy Birthday at the Vital Hotel. Let's see. What else we have here? It's Your Birthday. Luke Skywalker? I don't think so. All right, Fran. Here's what you get. This is for you, Fran. This is your birthday song. Specially curated. Here we go.
What? What? Oh, it's your birthday again. Yeah. So what am I supposed to do here? Am I supposed to sing happy birthday to you every time it's your birthday? All right, fine. This is it. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. All right? God. Can a cat just get some sleep around here?
There you go, Fran. A little happy birthday. How is that? That is Uncle Luke. Uh-oh, we got more. Here, we'll do the Baggins one. Fran, you get a twofer. Moanin' Mo Baggins. Fran gets a twofer. So if you felt a little slighted there by the grumpy cat, Fran, let's see what Moanin' Bo Baggins has for you. Here we go.
up this morning, I noticed the date. I remembered your birthday, didn't want to be late, so I've been choosing an e-card. Got those choosing an e-card blues. Oh yeah, baby. Well, I wanted to say happy birthday, but didn't know which e-card to choose. So I went and chose this one, baby. Happy birthday.
Oh, that's an e-card commercial. That felt a little too commercial, didn't it? That was a little too commercial. Bill Smith liked it. Fran, how about one more? You get 3. Somebody in the future will say, "Do you remember that time? Do you remember that time you played Fran 3 birthday songs?" I'm setting a bad precedent here, Fran. A bad precedent. All right. Here, let's go back. Let's go back. Where are we? We're going to find the perfect one. The absolute perfect birthday song. Destiny's Child? I don't think so. I don't think so. Katy Perry? I don't think so. Happy Birthday Acapella. Well, this was kind of interesting. It's too long though. It's 5 minutes. 5 minutes of an Indian birthday song. Interesting, but 5 minutes is too long. Let's see what else do we have here. The Beatles, Happy Birthday. So yeah, 5 minutes of Bollywood. Freddie Mercury. Oh, it's a happy birthday to Freddie Mercury. What is this? We got some birthday cake eggs, the grumpy cat, the orangutan. Here we go. One more for you, Fran. This is called the Oriental version. Oh, that sounds good. That sounds good. This is a good one. This is your last one. This will be the day where you had 3 birthday songs.
Happy birthday to you, happy birthday, happy birthday, happy birthday to you, happy birthday. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to Amani. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday. Happy birthday. Hepimiz yani burada bugün arkadaşın doğum günü kutlamakta toplamış bulunmaktayız. Happy birthday. Bu da. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, happy birthday, happy birthday to you.
Now there you go. A little Kawali happy birthday. How about that? Oh, it looks like our man of the moment has arrived. Let's bring him in here. Glenn Streeter.
Robert Phoenix.
How are you?
Great to be a part of your new project.
Well, we're happy to have you here. I'm glad you're not a boomer, so I can't blame your lack of tech knowledge on being a boomer. So you don't get the boomer pass, Glenn. So what's happening there in Colorado?
Oh, I just did a 300-mile motorcycle camping trip this weekend. It was wonderful.
A good.
Got up into southern Wyoming and got to see some terrain that is pretty remote.
Good deal, man. Born to be wild.
Move over, Dennis Hopper.
So you're here tonight for a reason, and the reason being that, well, you happen to be an Aquarian, and the idea was we were going to look at sort of where sports medicine is and where recovery is for a lot of these pro athletes, and using really advanced technologies to stay on the field longer, recover faster, improve their performance. So I think that's probably a pretty good place to start. But before we get into it, I don't know if you know this or not, but Tim Wakefield passed away.
Yeah, I saw that. One of the great knuckleballers of all time.
Won 200 games, throwing a knuckleball, and
helped the Red Sox win the World Series.
And he's 57. He was 57 years old, and we have to be a bit, how shall I say, circumspect with our language here on the live stream. But I believe that there might have been perhaps some pharmaceutical intervention in his life, if you know what I mean.
That would be a shame.
Right. And who else? Somebody else recently just passed away. Who was it? Oh, but you never know. I don't think he would do it, but you wonder if he had a accident. Russ Francis died. You know Russ Francis?
Yeah, football player, right?
Yeah, he played for the New England Patriots. Yeah. He was a total free spirit. He died in a plane crash.
Right. He played with Grogan in that era.
Right. He played 4 years. I think he played 4 or 5 years with the 49ers. And Bill Walsh told him to, and Russ was an Aries. So he was kind of a daredevil guy. He was always pushing the edge. And, he would do stuff like, parachute and parasail and surf. And Russ was an adrenaline junkie. And Bill Walsh used to tell him, he said, look, man, you know, while you're playing football, you should probably tone that down. And nobody was ever going to tell Russ Francis what to do. And he said, Bill, I live this way and I'll die this way. And guess what? He did. He died in a plane crash. And we don't know what the circumstances were that caused the plane crash. But two kind of really interesting and singular figures in New England sports both passed away within a 24-hour period.
I just lost a mountain guide colleague, 30 years old, colon cancer. Fully jabbed, chemo, radiation.
Right. So just to be sure, on YouTube, so this video can stay up, right? We have to use code.
Right. Is that enough code?
What's that?
Is that enough code?
Well, I would say, we call the prick the carjack. You can call whatever it's just this one area where, they've got these algorithms and they've got these bots crawling around, and it's not even human. And then they'll just pick up the language. So, unfortunately, that's what's happening. And we don't want to make this the focus of our show, but we've seen, and it does get into athletics though, we've seen a lot of athletes just collapse, right? And the most famous being LeBron James' son, who theoretically was diagnosed with myocarditis. And you having a medical background, we'll talk about that in a second. That Bronny James, they would have found that out about him a long time ago. Am I right?
They're the most tested people on the planet other than special forces military people.
Right. So if he had myocarditis, they would have known way before he collapsed at a practice at USC.
Yep.
So that'll be interesting because basketball season is coming. And even though he is not an exceptional talent, he's LeBron's son. So there's been a lot of hype and a lot of anticipation for him to make his college basketball debut. It'll be interesting to see what happens when that rolls around. Well, let's get into your background a little bit. You went to Liberty College. You played baseball there. You had a little bit of a run with the Pittsburgh Pirates in their farm system. While you were at Liberty, you studied health, right? Is that what you studied? What did you?
Sports medicine, exercise physiology.
There you go. So these
With
are
your minor in philosophy and theology. How's
so
that?
this is your background at Liberty College. You got a sports medicine training. And one of your claims to fame is that you helped Eric Green, who was a pretty spectacular football player, probably one of the best football players to come out of Liberty. You helped him kind of get back together physically and have a career in the pros, which is a pretty decent one.
Yeah, Eric tore a hamstring. I don't remember what year it was, but we rehabbed him back and went on to be what I believe is probably the best tight end to ever play the game. I don't think that's too much of a stretch, but yeah, wonderful guy, hard worker.
So Dr. Yu says we have chest scans in high school football. They would definitely know.
Exactly.
Yeah. Let's talk
Now
a
we
little
have
bit.
things like heart rate variability, HRV, which we can get into later. But all these guys go through that. HRV is the number one predictor of heart attack in the world.
Let's get into it now. Let's talk about it now.
Okay. So just so we don't miss anything real quick, I just wanted to talk about the background that you and I talked about as a prelude to the show. So if we think about it, and of course I'm generalizing, but prior to World War II, who was the most revered, respected, and taken care of group in any society? It would be the warrior class, right?
Yep.
After World War II, it became the peaceful warrior class, or the athlete, who became the most revered and respected and assisted, if you will. Also, if we look at all the data that we gathered from all this warfare, if you look at in the Civil War, if you got injured, your chances of death were about 90%. If you got injured in Vietnam, your chances of survival were about 90%, as long as they could get you back in about a 3-hour window. So all of that data mining and all of the foundations of physical therapy, occupational therapy, exercise physiology, all began to have these gigantic data sets. So we began to modulate how we did our training. And this segues right into HRV. So one of my mentors is the one who introduced heart rate variability to the military. And what they found out was these guys were way overtrained, and especially your special forces. What's the point if you're going to go do a mission and you're too tired to accomplish the mission?
Right.
So a giant leap was made in terms of cutting back on the training and really, really honing it down, like fine tuning an automobile, a race car.
So so what you're saying is a lot of the sports technology and training evolves out of the military.
Yes, it all comes out of the whole warrior system, basically.
Right.
How to get people back on the battlefield in a hurry.
Yeah.
How to deal with triage, who needs surgery now and who needs some physical therapy, etc. Right.
Well, steroids come out of World War II, don't they?
Yeah, I knew this was going to come up. I respect what those things have done for sports performance, but that's the pharmaceutical angle. I'd like to focus on the energy medicine.
Right. No, just context. This is just a context.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we have heart rate variability beginning to determine training protocols, and now that becomes adopted by the top athletes in the world. So Lance Armstrong's, one of his doctors is one of my teachers, and we talked about this a lot in terms of, so let's say you wake up on a Tuesday morning and you don't know if it's a red light, yellow light, or green light day in terms of your training. The heart rate variability will actually tell you what your physiology wants you to do. So a red light day might be some acupuncture, some massage, maybe some pool time, gentle stretching. Yellow light day would be moderate exercise, and then green light day would be WFO, right? Just hang it all out.
Right.
So when we base our training based on the data rather than just how we feel or what some person has put together in terms of a periodization protocol, it's much, much more individualized and much more effective. So the testing part has been a really big part of the advancements in sports performance.
Right. Well, a lot of these players now are totally wired. You know, they're wearing these watches.
Yeah.
In some cases, who knows what else they're wearing, right? And they're being completely monitored, and they're creating these physiological profiles based on sleeping, rest. I mean, these guys now are basically under biological surveillance. A lot of this comes out of the Phil Knight world at Nike and University of Oregon. And they're getting just incredibly specific with the data and the information that they're getting back from the body. Have you encountered people in that world that are that granular and they're hooked up to some kind of a mainframe and somebody's collating their data and completely like mapping out, you know, their daily schedule?
Sure, we do that for a lot of our high-level athletes.
Yeah.
And we have the technology to do that.
Sure. Yeah.
There's much deeper dives than Fitbit. Let me put it that way.
Oh, totally. Absolutely. It always brings up the question about privacy and body autonomy. But I guess when you're in that world, you've already made a commitment and agreement to basically do whatever it takes in order to maximize one's performance. Mm-hmm. So it's probably less of a question of conscience for some of these guys.
Right.
So where are we in terms of some of the technology that is being used for recovery at a high level? Hyperbaric chambers, of course, seem to be talked about. Some of the products that you have on your website, like the PEMF. So where are we with technology and rapid recovery?
So that's an exciting world because there is a huge amount of crossover with the general public. Obviously, they get injured and sick as well. So what we found is that everything is a voltage problem prior to being a chemistry problem. So I would say that that's the biggest shift, is not focusing on pharmacopoeia, Latin root word sorcery, by the way, and raising the voltage and actually being able to monitor those parameters. So the number one way we do that is, as you mentioned, PEMF therapy. In our world, after almost 4 decades at doing this, PEMF is the most regenerative technology available. Laser beds or LED beds are up there as well in the regeneration category. Ozone therapy, very powerful. The hyperbaric, depending on the issue.
Right.
We've seen miracles with hyperbaric, and then we've seen 80 sessions with not a change, depending on the problem. So it needs to be case specific.
Right.
Oxygen tents, or altitude tents that folks like to sleep in, those have been valuable. Living here in Boulder, considering itself to be the athletic capital of the world, a lot of reason that endurance athletes are here is because we're at 6,000 feet and you can get up to 14,000 very quickly. And
right.
That's a gigantic advantage to go back to sea level.
So a lot of these teams, a lot of these professional teams are stocked full of this equipment. They're like really at the cutting edge, aren't they?
Absolutely. Yep. The Broncos, I don't know about the team necessarily, but we know about 10 players who have our technology. And it's kind of become an a la carte self-service kind of situation where the training rooms are very solid now. They certainly moved in this direction, but the individuals, a lot of them have really, spent millions of dollars on their careers creating a rehab unit at home or a recovery unit at home. I think it's fantastic.
Right. Joe Namath has essentially gone all in on hyperbaric chambers, mm-hmm. and how they've affected him positively for CTE, right? So there's a guy who has a foot in that world, and he keeps going to the NFL to talk to the NFL about using hyperbaric chambers, and they're not really listening. I think that's kind of weird.
Yeah, they should be focused on PEMF if they want to do the fastest brain recovery. But I do agree. Any type of intervention that's potentially regenerative is what they should be focused on.
Right. So where do you think all of this is growing or going? Where I use growing as a kind of a Freudian slip. We've got the ability to create organs, tissue, muscle, tendon. All these can happen in the 3D printer world, right? Like where is that going in terms of, let's say you have a Tommy John operation, right? So instead of taking a tendon out of your thigh, they just grow a tendon. Like, do you see this becoming a part of where sports is going?
No question. And, I get this question all the time about the dangers and the potential magnificence of transhumanism. And I think it's important that we don't throw the baby out with the bathwater. I think the things that you're describing are transhumanism. We're transcending our humanity, right? So in that regard, I'm all for it, especially if it's your own tissue, which the 3D printing uses.
Right.
I have associates who have stem cell protocols that use your own tissue or tissue from an infant that was, not eliminated inappropriately, but voluntary situations and
Sure.
Tested for genetic defects and what have you. So
Yep.
I'm all for that. This is a difficult enough existence as it is. Any advantage we can get, 2 thumbs up, as long as it doesn't mean putting a chip in me and making me a part of the Borg or the Hive, which obviously freedom-loving people have no interest in.
So where is the line? I think this is a really interesting question.
Mm-hmm.
So let's say, for instance, somebody was able to, let's say, augment your knee and put in a completely bionic knee, right? But it's more than just a bionic knee. Maybe, it's like, wow, it's way stronger than the other knee that I had. Maybe I should get my other knee replaced. And now I've got 2 of these things, and my ability to get lift is increased by 3 or 4 inches, right? Like, I could totally see that coming. And even though we won't have a chip in us, the augmentation of the body, clearly, it's probably already here for all we know, right? But the augmentation of the body for performance is on the table. Where are we with that? And where are you philosophically with that?
Well, I think the threshold is, do I have the ability to turn off such or said technology? Would be very easy for them to do a bionic knee and put a chip in there and monitor you 24/7, right? So you may not have that ability. And, the essence of every contract is one where things are laid on the table and people volunteer for them. Unfortunately, this planet doesn't typically do that, and there's always a backdoor in the contract.
The devil's in the details.
I'd like to be doing some Daryl Dawkins, break some backboard dunks again, like Nick I ever did. But what price are you willing to pay for that level of performance?
For some people, I think there is a rash of steroid deaths in the 80s and the 90s, and high school players who were really, not just trying to make the team, but get a scholarship and launch their way into the pros. I've seen a number of documentaries on some of these young guys just wind up blowing their brains out or just going too far. So I think people will max out sometimes. They'll take it to the limit if it means that they'll transcend whatever kind of limitations they have. Don't you think?
Mm-hmm. That's what humans do in general, but Westerners in particular is, if a little bit is good, a lot must be fantastic.
Yeah.
So, in fact, I just lost one of my mentors to steroids. One of the great trainers in the history of the world, Charles Poliquin. People can look him up. He was being monitored closely too. But I told him there are parameters that they're not monitoring for that you may be missing. And certainly that was the case.
Right.
So
Aaron Rodgers supposedly tore his Achilles 3 weeks ago or 4 weeks ago, Monday Night Football. There's some debate. Like, there's a lot of high strange around that injury, which we've talked about here. But let's just say, for the sake of exposition, that did happen. You, as somebody who comes from energy medicine and this world of kind of emerging Aquarian technology, what would you advise Aaron Rodgers to do based on that?
So if he were my patient, we would immediately focus on the topicals. I can run through a couple of those real quick that folks can have access to that are total game changers. So DMSO, topical THC or CBD, arnica, emu oil, iodine, believe it or not, the kind of iodine that we would use on cuts and scrapes. We bathe the injured area with that because iodine has what's called hormesis. It's radioactive, so it creates a healing response. It's about as basic energy medicine as you can get. Then we would be lasering that area with medium to high-powered laser. We would be using PEMF probably for 2 hours a day. Massage, hitting acupuncture points either with needles or with the laser. And then ramp up the rehabilitation and the movement appropriately and accordingly. He can come back. We have the technology now where that's not a career ender anymore. It
used to be. Like,
yep,
you tore your Achilles, you were done.
Just happened to Eli Tomac, who's one of the greatest motocross racers in the world right now, multiple time champion, just tore his Achilles in a freak accident. But he'll be back here in a couple months, thanks to all of this technology.
So so these are technologies that we know. They're on the table. They're kind of at the cutting edge. They're being used. This is all Aquarian stuff. Like, where is this going to go? Because I feel like things are going to go parabolic, and some of them aren't always going to be readily acceptable by society. And then we're kind of going into that kind of transhumanism world. So where do you think, like, on the edge of all this healing, you're there now, and you're using these applications in very specific ways. What's just on the other side of it?
I think the most tangible is going to be probably maybe 100-year-old lifespans where we're actually still functional and doing cool things. I mean, who wants to be 100 and playing checkers on the porch? If we can be 100 and still be traveling and performing at a reasonable level,
yep.
You know, I see that very, very soon.
Yeah.
The challenge is we're living in a time. I'll actually spell the word because I don't want us to get kicked off. But EUGENICS we seem to be in that situation right now. The same group of people who's trying to limit and reduce numbers is not going to allow a lot of these technologies to become extant. So we'd have to navigate that, and I've kind of operated in a black world, if you will, the kind of the Tor browser of medicine, if you will.
Right. Yeah.
The dark web of medicine, you know.
Yeah.
These things are becoming more popular now, though, and with open source medicine and other breakthroughs, I don't think they'll be able to stop it.
Right. In your years of experience doing this, what's been the greatest breakthrough? You know, the greatest kind of game changer in terms of getting people like back on their feet and performing?
I know I'm a broken record, but I would have to say PEMF, just head and shoulders.
Explain to people what PEMF is.
Okay. Pulsed electromagnetic field therapy.
Mm-hmm.
So the Earth puts out a field called the Schumann resonance. I'm sure your folks are well aware of that. 7.84 hertz is at least the foundational number that we've been given. And that's how the human brain and the human heart actually resonate at that particular frequency. It's really a beautiful thing. You know, we have this synergy with the Earth. We're not just some aliens here. So PEMF takes that from an acoustic guitar, which in this case is 0.5 Gauss, the Earth's pulse. That's the level of horsepower, and takes it up to anywhere up to 3,000 Gauss. So we're basically taking an acoustic guitar and making an electric guitar. We're not creating anything artificial. So as this field goes through the body, we get a 400% increase in stem cells in 15 minutes. You can't get that from a $10,000 injection, which I'm not against. We do have corroboration with all kinds of colleagues in the stem cell world, all for it. but everything's a cost benefit ratio, right? So as this field is put through the body, we get an increase in detox, increase in blood flow, lymphatic drainage, the stem cell proliferation. It's just all positive. And these things used to be out of reach for most people, but now they're coming down in price. It's economies of scale, just like the first calculator was $1,000, and now there's one on your phone for free, right? So,
Right, exactly.
yeah, we're headed that way. And also the phone is going to be an integral part of the healing process moving forward. If folks go to our website, they can see the AO scan, which is a very inexpensive phone/tablet situation where you can basically monitor yourself and introduce frequencies to heal things. We've seen sore throats and ear infections go away in 10 minutes. Sprained ankles resolve in a few hours. You know, it's really amazing technology.
And how long has PMF been around?
So if you go back far enough with Tesla, the original Nikolai Tesla, not the car company, he had this type of technology, and it was becoming available. And then Big Pharma put the kibosh on that. And then there was a resurrection with Dr. Pappas from Greece. Everyone can look up the Papini, PEAPIMI machine. If I remember correctly, it was in the $60,000 range, and it needed to be dragged around behind a truck with a trailer. But it was quite effective. And so since that time period, everything's been miniaturized. It's moved from AC to DC, or alternating current to direct current, which the body is actually direct current. And we're able to get similar results to these hugely expensive machines with something that everyone can have in their living room. And all these
I've actually had some friends who have purchased the PMF from you, and it really seems to have helped my friend Lee, who had just absolutely chronic osteoporosis and could not heal this broken wrist that she had set in pins for months and months and months. And then she got the PMF from you, and it really seemed to help and accelerate that process, which was really no process at all at that time. So at least one person I know who's used the PMF has really benefited from it.
We hear miracle stories every day. I'm really blessed to be a part of this.
Yeah, good deal. All right. Well, have you ever heard of this Russian device? I think it's called an oscillator or something like that. Have you heard about it?
Yeah, you're talking about the Lakovsky.
Right.
Yep.
Yeah, what are your thoughts on that?
So Lakovsky was one of the true geniuses of energy medicine. The difference with Lakovsky is it's not a magnetic device. It's more like a Rife machine. It's more of a radio frequency.
Right.
So we are missing out on that foundational magnetism part that I mentioned between the heart and the brain and the earth. However, that doesn't mean that it's not hugely valuable.
Right.
Right. I have friends that were the original people to bring that into the country, and they got great results with that.
We're going to have one of those at the event here in October.
Oh yeah.
So people are going to go on an oscillator ride while they're here.
They're pretty rare.
Yeah. Yeah. No, we've got somebody who lives in the area who has one, and she's a friend of Shauna who's going to be presenting at the event. So I'll tell you how it goes, man. I'm gonna get into the oscillator.
All for it.
Yeah.
The closest someone can come to that now on a practical level is a Rife machine.
But, yeah. Well, let's take this to another level. So do you think that some of these sports franchises are delving into things like Rife, radionics? Do you think that there's another level that we don't know about, but they know about, that they're playing around with? Have you heard anything along those lines?
Well, most of my teachers are folks who worked in NASA space program, Russian space program, German, European Space Agency program. If it's out there, they would have told me about it.
Right.
So to answer your question, I think that there's an institutional openness for, let's say, the Denver Broncos training room, for just an example.
Right.
Then there's the individual, as I mentioned before, the individuals with their now deep pockets creating their own rehab center and
Oh,
delving into these things that the training room just hasn't gotten to yet, right?
Right.
Or that, we're talking about 100 guys at training camp, right? It gets whittled down, but that's I've worked in those training rooms. It's very busy. If we have 10 of these $40,000 machines, that means only 10 guys are getting treated. So the smart ones buy one and take it home.
The Denver Broncos were recently purchased by the Walton family.
Is that right?
Yeah. And they've got deep pockets. And just like Phil Knight and how he really invested in sports medicine and technology, they really are indeed a lot of this stuff in Oregon, right? I could see the Walton family throwing a lot of money at sports medicine and performance for the Broncos because they have the deep pockets for it.
It's the only way to do it now. And you know what happens? The bar gets raised. Let's say that it was a 6. Now it's a 7. Now everybody has to go to 7.
Yeah.
Right. Kind of like the 5G situation where we don't really need it, but if everyone has it and you're going to miss out on that important stock trade because you're a millisecond behind, then now you're compelled to move towards that technology. So I think there's going to be an inevitable tsunami where we have to go in this direction, particularly since the debacle of the last few years has shown us the true colors of the establishment.
Right.
A lot of folks really, really looking for alternatives.
The medical mafia.
Yeah.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Hey, Jasper.
Jasper decided to jump in.
Rudy's here somewhere.
Jasper has his own sports medicine program. It's called Joan. That's his sports medicine program. So, Glenn, where can people find out?
Here's
oh, look at this.
Here's Mayor McCheese.
Here we go. Two dudes with cats. That's not a good sign, man. Yeah,
I'm comfortable with my sexuality.
Yeah, me too. I'm all right with it. So where can people find out more about your products and your services and all this great advice that
EnergyMedFit.com.
Yeah.
They can also go to Gaia.com. I have 2 episodes. Nothing like your 25. But and then folks can go to YouTube and BitChute and type in my name. We have probably 100 videos at this point.
So do you have those Gaia videos like loaded on your site?
Yeah.
Okay, good.
Yeah. I think one of them.
One of them. Okay, so
it's been edited. It's kind of more of a teaser. We're not violating anybody. I love Gaia. I really respect what they've done.
Yeah. So the ironclad agreement. Once it's theirs, it's theirs. You can't use it, right?
Right.
That's part of the deal. So EnergyMedFit.com, right?
.com.
Yeah. So I have the link in the show notes. So if you're interested, if you're an athlete and you're interested in performance and recovery, Glenn's your guy. Or if you're somebody who's just going through some major discomfort and you want an alternative way of looking at it and dealing with it, he's also your guy. So EnergyMedFit.com. There you go. What else, Glenn? You got anything else you want to share with the peeps before we sign off here?
Yeah, you mentioned if I had to pick the top, so PEMF was number 1.
Right.
I would say Carbon 60 is number 2. Anyone who's an athlete and who's hardcore and is not taking Carbon 60 is doing themselves a tremendous disservice. Reason being, it's the only antioxidant that can last through the Krebs cycle of exercise. All the other antioxidants get burned up very, very quickly. If you want lactic acid buffering, if you want 2 or 3 more % in terms of the weight that you can move, repetitions, recovery, all there. Some of my colleagues are calling it legal steroids. So we've actually had some hardcore people who blew out tendons and things using too much C60. So that's how powerful that can be.
Wow.
Too much weight.
Okay, so you got PMF, you got Carbon 60. What else?
I would say that shifting gears a little bit, a lot of the things around trauma resolution have been really powerful. Things like music therapy. My buddy, Dr. Steve Schwartz, has the Vibe Bed, which is on our website. Folks have these tremendous experiences in this. They can either type in the music that they want, or the machine can pick it for them, depending on their trauma.
Mhm.
And folks start crying. They have these amazing releases, and we're all carrying around a lot. Not an easy place to be, and so the elimination of these traumas can literally make us stronger and give us more endurance and help us recover faster, because we're not subconsciously processing all this misery.
Right. Well, that does affect our health, doesn't it? It's a whole body
Mhm.
system, whole body mind system.
Sure.
Cool. Well, Glenn, I know it's a little bit short, but you brought a lot of information here tonight, as you always do. So thanks for being here.
Thanks, Robert. It's fun stuff, and it's sky's the limit.
I think we're just really touching the surface here of this interface between energy and voltage, and this, when Pluto goes into Aquarius, this stuff's going to go off the charts. Like, really, both good and bad. I think there's going to be positive and negative applications for both of it. And, and I know you'll be there on the cutting edge of the positive applications. So thanks for being here, Glenn. Really appreciate it.
Thanks, Robert.
And have yourself a good tomorrow. That's Glenn Streeter, everybody, from energymedfit.com, talking about the breakthroughs of energy medicine and what it brings to the table. And this is all Aquarian stuff. So it fits into the rubric of astrology and sports, and where we're headed, and taking care of our bodies and all the things that go along with it. So there you go. A great night. I want to thank Al and Gracey. Gracey was awesome. And Glenn and everybody in chat. Fantastic stuff. Great show. We keep getting better and better here on Sirius Sports. So why don't we get on out of here? Let's play the video.
Be serious, man.
We want to play the video in its entirety. Here we go. Let's play the video. Oh, I want the screen. I want the cinematic effect. Use your head in order to discern what's real, your heart to say what's possible, and stay serious. We'll see y'all back here next week and tomorrow over on Astro Weather. Take care.
Cannot be serious.